Hi everyone, thanks for your patience. Looks like we've got a good group of people here now. There's still people coming in, but they can catch up as we go. So just to run you through today's webinar, obviously we're going to be talking about 3D Repo for health and safety predominantly, but we've got a couple of guest presenters in to talk about various topics. So I'm Andrew Norrie, I'm the commercial director at 3D Repo. I'll be, I guess, the host for today. So I don't know if anyone's used this Teams live events before. If you have, you'll know that there's a Q&A section off to the right hand side of your screen where you can answer questions. Please keep them coming in as the event's going on. We might ask some of them at the end of the person's presentation, but we'll probably save all of the questions to the end for a bit of a Q&A panel. So keep them coming in. First up, we've got Karim from Manchester University, who's going to be talking about the PAS 1192 Part 6 standard and the Discovering Safety programme that he's been and SafetiBase have also been feeding into. Then we'll be handing over to Zane Ulhaq from Atkins, who's been leading the SafetiBase side of 3D Repo for the last year or so. We'll be talking about how that project came about, what it does, and what its aims are. And then we'll hand over to Bogdan Davydov, who's a customer success manager at 3D Repo, who'll be giving us a live demonstration of how the SafetiBase system works within the 3D Repo environment. And then finally, we've got Tommy from Plinks, who will be looking at how we can do on-site monitoring and how that can be integrated in with SafetiBase via our API.
So, as I said, I have only 4 slides. I will talk about PAS 1192-6 in the beginning, and then I will say how it's aligned with Discovering Safety program. And then I will just conclude what output we had from phase 1, which just finished 2 months ago. So to start, as I was saying, that when I try to summarize any kind of document, I found that you have to find a magic number which can divide the document in a way. So for this document, PAS 1192-6, I found number 3 is the magic number, and I will talk about through this first. So where it started from BIM for Health and Safety Working Group, which, as I said, there's 3 gentlemen which are the pioneers of this. So Gordon Gregg, HSE, Peter Nicholas, and Nick Nesbitt. And all started from CDM. So CDM started with 3 requirements to take in consideration the general principle of prevention, provide information about the risk, and coordinate the work with other stakeholders. And from there, in PAS 1192-6, a clause 4.2, there were 3 main objectives. So the adapt health and safety risk management strategy, generate and use and share the information related to HSE, health and safety, and populate relevant structured information using consistent information exchange format. And if we look at this, they are completely aligned with the ones in the CDM. However, they are written in a way for digital information and how to share the information. So if we look at this, so chapter 5 or clause 5 talks about the health and safety management strategy. And this is a graph which is very important about identify, use, share, and generalize. Clause 6 talks about how every stakeholder can use the risk information cycle to be provided. And clause 7 talks about the relevant how to extract the information. And 8 and 9 and 10, which are another 3 clauses, talks about 3 different ways how to generate this information. So the first one, which is 8, so COBE and 3D or 4D model, so BIM model. So what can we take home from PAS 1192-6? So if I try to summarize it in something 3, I would say to achieve it, To achieve what's required from PAS 1192-6, you need effective common data environment, you need soft landing and collaborative process. And what terms to take from PAS 1192-6? If you know these three terms and you understand them, I believe you understand PAS 1192-6. So risk information cycles, as I said, the identify, use, share, and generalize. What's the definition of elevated risk? Because it's a new definition in PAS 1192-6. And the term semantic enrichment. Although it's not written like this in the specification, however, all the specification goes to this. So it's talking about data and how to share data, and they don't care about how it looks like or in what format, but as much as it's semantic, so you relate data to each other. And from there, we found an opportunity, which is the industry-wide knowledge bank. So we want to share all of this information with the idea of open data where everyone can access this data related to risk. Meanwhile, Discovering Safety is a project which is funded by Lloyd's Registration Foundation, and it's work done between University of Manchester and HSE and Thomas Ashton Institute. And the main mission of the Discovering Safety is delivering a global community data which we can learn from for new projects. And this program was an umbrella of different projects. It's still ongoing. Phase 2 will start next month. The different projects, there were text mining team, there was key leading indicators and others. And one of the projects which I worked on is Digital Health and Safety Risk Library BIM project. So as one of the comments I just saw from the audience, that why we are solving it in construction, can we do it before this? And actually that's how we started our project. So we started with the hypothesis saying that the most of the accidents in construction are predictable and can be prevented during the design and planning stage if the appropriate digital tools are utilized by designers and planners. So yes, we actually thought about this. So why we are waiting until construction to solve the problem? Why we not try to solve it earlier? Especially CDM now, it's a regulation that the designer has to take this in consideration. And we started from here. So our idea is we have HSC database, we have standards, we have other databases. And I just try to write HSC in the other way because although it's structured from document perspective, but it's unstructured from data perspective. So we needed a lot of work to extract information from there. And we have the designers and the planners. And all our idea is to transfer this information to them. So how to transfer this information? We need to extract, transform, and load. And once we do that, how we can load it, what's the kind of application? So we started looking at the application from here. So we started with, if we have our database, which is based on HSE and other database, we have the bank, the knowledge bank we are talking about, and we have PAS 1192 and CDM definitely in consideration. We can help the designers and the planners in two different ways. And if you look on the left, the both side, there is prevention and there is reaction, but I'm talking about while you are designing the model, not the event itself. So the design which would eventuate this event or this risk. So we can help them in two different ways. We can help them with prevention application or reaction application. Because I just highlighted here the identify and use and share and generalize from PAS 1192. In the prevention application, we can have hazard identification. We can identify the different kind of hazards. We can provide treatment prompt suggestion. And I'm not going to talk about this a lot, but we use the word treatment instead of mitigation because of ISO 5000, I think, the risk management one. I will not talk about that. Once we know the hazard identification and the treatment prompt suggestion, we can visualize the data in a BIM platform. And we can do some automatic rule checking to check the model during this. Later on, we can do training using serious games. So learning from this knowledge-based system, we can do serious games which young designers and undergraduate engineers can learn from how to deal with safety. And the other side of reaction is the risk prediction. So we can use machine learning and artificial intelligence based on all the supervised data we have in the knowledge bank. And this build our bow tie where how we can help designers to have better or prevention through design or design for safety or safety in design. So before we run, we need to walk. So we started looking at these 4 different aspects, which is hazard identification, treatment, prompt suggestion, visualization, and automatic rule checking before serious games and machine learning and risk prediction. We looked at 196 incidents in HSE archive. We had 2 steering committee. We had 6 workshops with different organization designers like Atkins and Arab. We had 3 presentations in different workshops and conferences, and in total we had 79 experts engaged in our work in phase 1. So what's the output of phase 1? First one is the hazard identification, and as I showed in the SafetiBase demonstration, we identified 7 different concepts which we can understand the hazard from, and we extracted this information from the 196 incidents we looked at, which were press releases and readers. We interviewed and we had focus groups with experts to find a way to solve this, and we provided treatment prompts to every scenario in the shape this, which transferred to the CSV file, which in SafetiBase now. We worked with SafetiBase for the hazard visualization, and the last thing now we are working on is automatic rule checking. So what we are trying to do, we need to link these 7 concepts with the IF, and the only way we found this is can be done through ontology and IFCL. So we are working now mapping these 7 concepts to the IFCL, so it would be available that you can do an automatic rule checking while you're doing your design or even during planning in authorization tool like Revit, for example. That's it. Thank you very much. If you would like to participate in phase 2, please contact Gordon Crick, HSE. And thanks very much.
Can you see my slides? And can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it still show?
Yeah, but try clicking the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's working fine. Okay.
Fine. Okay, I'll start. So, hi everyone. Thanks for your time today. Just going to quickly go through SafetiBase, and as Andrew mentioned, Bogdan will do a demo afterwards. So I'll be going through where it's actually come from and what problems we were facing, which is why we did it. And Bogdan will give us what it actually is in a little bit more detail. So SafetiBase started a little while ago and has come together as an industry initiative via the partners you see below. It's currently being led by Atkins, and we have support from the general group, but we have more detailed support and more involved support with 3Repo and MOTS. So I'll just explain really quickly how we got to where we were today. Looking at it from Atkins' perspective and various other groups within the industry, about 2 or so years ago, or perhaps a little further back than that, as building information modeling started becoming more prevalent in our industry, various groups looked at, could we make our health and safety practices and processes better? And invariably, it wasn't a unique solution or unique idea that was being thought by any one particular company, but actually multiple people thinking that we could do something better in this space. In Atkins, we had one individual, Stuart King, who thought about risk beacons with, I think, on a discussion with Lang O'Rourke. We placed that in our digital creator, which is essentially an ideas platform. And through individuals such as Neil Thompson and others in the industry, we'd realized that there were many others who were thinking the same thing. So rather than try and reinvent the wheel and fragment the industry further, let's work together as an industry to try and find a solution that's palatable for everyone. And fast forward a few more years after developing the first few iterations of SafetiBase, it was successful in winning the Construction Computing Awards 2018 in the category of health and safety. So what was the problem we were previously facing in the industry? Well, as you're all aware, when it comes to health and safety, everyone has their own little minutiae approaches to how we should approach it and what we should do. Whilst we all use risk registers, the columns that we use can differ from person to person, project to project, even within the same organization. So to think that there may be differences between consultants and contractors is a given, as well as how clients may manage their risks. Typically as well, we end up with a lot of work where there's previous risks from previous projects that are just thrown onto the newer projects. So the type of information that we have tends to be fairly complicated. It can be unstructured and it's disconnected. So we thought rather than us just coming up with an idea with no survey information on whether this is true, we thought we'll do a quick trial and try and find out whether there is actually any justification behind this problem, if it's actually a concrete problem. So we tried to port some risks from Thames Tideway West even, sorry, to HS2, and just to prove a point to see whether or not this is actually an issue. And by going through the various processes, most of which are not detailed on here, this is just a representation, we found that it was very difficult to try and get it across in a seamless manner. It was something that required a lot of manual process and a lot of thought involved, which of course, from an industry perspective, can bring things to a grinding halt. So given that we'd proven that there is an issue in this space, we decided that whatever we provide at this stage should be something that's simple, structured, and connected. So through the I3P that you saw before, which helped start up SafetiBase, we started looking at 3 phases in which we would try and develop. And to date, we've been successful in achieving all 3 of these stages. Now, what that was one, provide a simplified structure, which is where Karim was talking about PAS 1192 Part 6. So obviously you'll go back to that and you'll get more information on that. But that's the backbone of this piece of work. So this is all based off of that, rather than it being any particular flavor of Atkins or Mott's or Costain or any other consultancy or contractor within the industry. It follows an industry standard. We then decided we needed a web-based platform, mainly looking at this database approach. What you see here in screen 2 is a viewer. The actual smarts behind SafetiBase is using the intelligence of 3D repos, servers, and this database API platform, as opposed to just having a specific viewer. So you'd be able to view this in your native Revit modeling system as well. But then we thought the actual information that we're saving is the data, and so we should be able to do a little bit more with that and drive analytics and savings and whatnot out of the back of that. So connecting that to a form of a dashboard, which in this instance you can see is Power BI. Now I won't play these because fortunately for everyone, we're going to be getting an actual demo from Bogdan. And shortly after we went past this process and we were successful with the I3P in demonstrating that we had delivered on our promises, we had gained quite a lot of attention from various bodies within the industry, and we were fortunate enough to work together with the HSE through their Discovering Safety program, which was always a key focus for us, because we felt that if we just try and pull this information together that we have on health and safety data just from an industry perspective, not taking into account public bodies that hold importance, such as the Health and Safety Executive, we wouldn't be able to do far more for the sake of the industry. So when looking at this, we decided that working with them, we can look at this risk treatment tool, which, as you see, I've highlighted here on the recommended mitigations. And what we were hoping was that as we move forward into the future, we can almost, as you'll see with what Bogdan shows you, there's a way of documenting risks, but with time we're hoping that what we can actually do is we can move into a sphere where risks will be automatically pulled together based on how models are collated. We can auto mitigate against those risks, of course, with a competent user and a competent designer, contractor or client, and we're able to drive industry insights and industry solutions. So rather than it being an Atkins solution, a MOT solution, it's something that we shouldn't look to commercialize, and that's where we're hoping to work together with the ODI and the HSE to make sure that we can set up a form of a data trust where everyone can feed into this and benefit from it. Because as every company says and as every individual says, health and safety is paramount in our industry, and we need to make the most of making it successful and not just give it some lip service. So that's all from me for now. Bogdan will obviously give you a nice demo into what the tool actually is, so I'll pass over to him.
Hi everyone, thanks for dialing in today. What seems to be, I guess, quite a hot topic at the moment, health and safety on site, and how can we monitor it without actually gaining much access to it due to some circumstances. Well, here is SafetiBase, and I'm going to quickly show you how it works within the 3D Repo environment and how you can utilize it for better risk management and health and safety management. As pointed out earlier, this is actually driven by the PAS 1192 Part 6 standards. And we've done some cool work recently with Discovering Safety project, where we've actually moved into a field of open learning, and this is what we're trying to pursue. So let me just open up the model for you, and then you can see how it all works. From PAS 1192 Part 6 standards, what we've noticed is that, great, we can actually standardize the whole use of health and safety risk information, where we share it, where we identify it, then we use the actual mitigation proposal. But where the pitfall is actually in a little section that frequently pops up in a document called generalize, right? Or the long bar across the progressive development of health and safety information called open learning, right? So this is the area which actually could highly benefit everyone who is actually working on risk mitigation. Let me just first show you how SafetiBase works, what it gives the user, and how we have actually further refined it and will continue to do that. Most importantly is, since everyone's using 3D models, we can share this information. And in this case, we have a snippet of the construction site that's perhaps happening somewhere in London. I can even bring in GIS information if I want to. Let's say I bring in my transit info. You can cross-reference information. You can bring additional information to see what's the current traffic flow status. What are the truck restrictions? Can I bring in my trucks on site, and where are the access routes and things like that? So you can merge additional information to help you resolve better project risk management. But most importantly is that these little risk beacons that are floating around the model are for you to click on and get access to the actual information that people are wanting to share with you. So it's no longer a spreadsheet that you read and then you don't really understand what the risk is. In here, you can actually go in the environment that you are about to set foot on site for, right? So if, for instance, there is a risk with some sort of site layout or some possibility of you being struck, you can address it accordingly and according to the standards, and make sure that the relevant party finds the best possible solution. So how does that work? Well, let me show you actually. So for instance, if we navigate over to this model, and then this particular case, I noticed that there is actually a high risk of somebody potentially falling out of this crawler cab as they step out. We noticed that there's a massive fall right below us, and this railing doesn't seem to be sufficient enough to make sure that somebody stepping out doesn't accidentally fall down. So let me show you how I can use SafetiBase to address this issue and what steps I have to take in doing so. Let's say, okay, I pick up this issue in here and I want to make sure that the others get a chance to see it. I can give it a title such as, okay, this is going to be access to crawler cab. And then my description for this risk would be access to, or maybe let's say access for driver cab is perhaps restricted or maybe even dangerous, right? So once I'm done with that, what I can do next is I actually follow the standardize the schema from PAS 1192 part 6 and specify even more detail. I can then say how likely is this risk to happen? I say quite high because it's blatantly obvious that you're quite close to the edge. And what the consequence is very high. If somebody falls down, they potentially could die. But what we've done is we actually created a database that you can import to 3D Repo, and you can contribute even more treatment suggestions to it. So what happens now is instead of creating really complex algorithms for your machine learning systems that, you know, try and drill through the information people are providing, we try and do it differently. Instead of a person reinventing the wheel, why not propose them the solution that worked in the past or we think will work in the future? So instead of him specifying something and then a computer trying to calculate the result, why not point the right answer to the user directly? So if I, for instance, assign this risk to perhaps, let's say, main contractor who needs to deal with it, then I can go through a list, a category list, and not improvise by providing some sort of information that I think is relevant, but follow the standardized schema. So I have a data structure that actually makes sense and will allow me to drill through information and do better analytics. Here, without really knowledge of the standards or knowing how to use the platform, I can say, okay, well, the category is fall from open edge. What's the associated activity? I can say, oh yeah, machinery operation. This is precisely what is happening here. What's the element type? In this case, it's obviously nothing to do with the construction material. It's obvious to be a site machinery. What's the risk factor? I'd say perhaps physical opening because you can fall down. What's the construction scope? I'd say it's probably groundworks because this crane will be supplying materials for the blocks down below. And then what about location? I'd say it's perhaps high and near the opening, right? So once I completed that, and notice how I didn't have to specify any information that I think is right. Everything that I provided is already standardized and is lessons learned from the past, or perhaps a standard that was pushed across the project. What I can do next is I can actually drop a pin if I want to make sure that people remember where it's located. And if I want to, I can add additional markup to it as well. In this case, okay, I will actually specify this railing to be increased in height so they actually know what to do. And I'll say, okay, let me change the color. I'll probably make it red so that they notice. Okay, this is the area that concerns me. What I want the guys to do is I actually want them to increase the railing height if they possibly do that. So this is me picking up the risk, addressing it to the rest of the team, and then saving it. What happens next is that whoever is the main contractor or somebody working on this project, they no longer have a problem of being unable to access the information. They simply open the web browser, they log in, they see the information in here, they see a massive red beacon in here, click on the icon, and then they see the information here. Now, let me show you what we've done recently with Discovering Safety project, is we actually added this treatment section that allows you to find best possible solution. Previously, I showed you how we chose this predefined list of information. Now we're using that information to propose the best possible solution. This could be driven across the practice by your health and safety team, or this could be driven across maybe a project where you have specific project requirements for managing health and safety. When you click on the suggest button, once again, instead of reinventing the wheel, we can look at the pool of information that you used in the past to fix similar problem, or something that perhaps matches a certain criteria, proposes you best possible solution. So in this case, I say I can drill down even further, say, okay, this is site work, temporary works. And in fact, I can choose to either inform it, or maybe perhaps in this case, I want to eliminate it because it's crucial. It's near opening that perhaps could prove to be fatal, right? So when I click select, I actually propose treatment suggestion. I didn't have to sit around, scratch my head, or go and ask specific individual to tell me how should I resolve it, because they've already done the work. They uploaded the actual suggestions online, and then all I have to do is just ask for that suggestion. Once I proposed it, everything gets auto-filled, and it's informing me of what I have to do. You know, perhaps provide a remote control workstation to operate, or maybe go and consult engineers to maybe provide some additional support in here, right? And then you can change the status of it and say, okay, cool, well, I actually proposed that. And if we actually take this mitigation route, perhaps the likelihood and the consequence will be low because the person will be protected. This will automatically update the actual risk beacon color as well. And if you want to take this further, you can actually share information like site images or anything like that. If you need to attach documents to it as well, you can do so. So for instance, if I have site team, let me just find that image. Let's say I'm working on site and then I want to actually share the information with the team as well. I can do so. I can go out, take site pictures, or even from the site office, and then drag and drop it into this as well. So, okay, here you go. I just attached an image and I can say this is my conditions on the 19th, 06/20. I click save. And then whoever's working on this, they no longer have to send images or emails back and forwards and look trace of what's happening. Since the initial recognition of this actual risk, there's a full audit trail of what changes have happened. You know what treatment procedure you have taken, and you can also share additional information. Let's say if you need to have a logbook for what's happening on site, you can log those images or anything like that as well. So this is pretty much how it works in terms of SafetiBase. The treatment suggestions that I mentioned, where they come from, is if you go back to TeamSpace, you go to the settings area. You can download the template. Once again, this is specified by the health and safety executive, and we work closely with Atkins and University of Manchester on this. So this template you can download if you want to, or you can download the existing and contribute some other additional information. But essentially what you do is you create this data pool, which is a structured data set, and you can actually use it to obviously manage better your risks across projects. You no longer have to improvise or spend time, learning how to use softwares or describing how the standards works and what it's meant to be. I think that's about it in the sense of the SafetiBase, the latest feature. So perhaps.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tommy Williams, and I'm the founder of Plinks. Plinks is a hazard intelligence system that improves the health and safety in the construction environment. I'll just give you a brief summary of what it does and how it can be integrated to external systems. So the system is split into two core features. So firstly, it's called Plinks Management. And this is a series of physical devices that are deployed around the construction environment with the goal of protecting the employee. And this is about creating an early warning system to prevent injury or fatality risk by monitoring the proximity of workers or vehicles to hazards. And ultimately reducing damage to equipment and preventing project delays. And then the second part of the system is Plinks Intelligence, which is a data-driven application which provides a robust audit trail to protect the employer against things like prosecution and reputation risk, and then potentially even disputed insurance claims. So the system revolves around our experience in developing wireless technologies. So the system is made up of a series of tags that all connect to a central network that we deploy on site. The network can span distances of up to 3 miles and in the construction environment from the welfare unit. So just a brief description of the tags. So there's the team tag, which is a device that clips to a standard Euro slot on a construction helmet. The goal of that is to protect people. And the second device is called a hazard tag. It clips to the top of a standard construction cone or to a scaffold or edge protection. And that's about defining exclusion zones or safe working zones and protecting places. And then the third is a machine tag, and it fits to any standard piece of construction kit. And it warns about proximity of either people or the proximity of that plant to hazardous places. So just to give you some example of how those three tags are being used. So the team tag can be used to monitor social distancing, but equally it can be used as part of the connected site to monitor lone workers that are operating at the extremity of the site if it has an inbuilt SOS functionality, so you can call for help if you need it. The hazard tag can be used for either creating exclusion zones, for example, around hot works or a hole in the ground or anything really. But also it can be used as a safe working zones for example, on highways or rail applications where you want to create a dynamic safe working zone. You can do that by deploying the hazard tags. The unique part of our system is that we use physical tags so that we can track the exclusion zone, create a link between the real and the virtual world, and then also monitor the relationship between people and hazards on site. And then finally, the machine tag, it can be used to monitor people and plant, or the interaction between people and plant, but also plant and hazard. So all of these products work together as part of the system. So just to give you some specs about what that can do. So as I said, the wireless network is dynamic, and it can extend up to 3 miles. It's very easy to set up. It's a 12 volt or 240 volt system, so it can be run either on the mains or from the vehicle. And it's deployable in buildings and, more importantly, throughout tunnels. So we can deploy networks within long range, even within long range within tunnels. As I said, it can be deployable from a vehicle, and it's also expandable over 3 miles. 3 miles is just is what the base station can deploy on its own. And one of the core bits of technology that we are very proud of is our location and proximity functionality. So we can do proximity detection at very high accuracy. It's 30 centimeter tolerance, and we have an omnidirectional, unlike a lot of other systems, we have an omnidirectional proximity detection. So the device is connected to a construction helmet, and unlike some competing solutions that are maybe chest mounted or around the neck, or a wrist mounted device whereby radio waves can be absorbed by the body, or in fact the effects of the way that it's worn actually means that it's not possible to create an omnidirectional radio pattern. We've really focused in on this, and it's one of our USPs. So the helmet mounted is definitely the way to go there. We can also do distance and direction tracking. So we don't just do proximity. We can also tell whereabouts in relation to the hazard you are. And then one piece of patented technology is the ability to create automatically configurable zones from a hazard tag. So the ability to be able to deploy cones in a straight line or a polygon shape, and be able to create that as a safe zone or an exclusion zone, and then to be able to update that without even needing to use a web app or a tablet or whatever. Okay, so this is just a rough overview of what the network would look like. So we have the main tags that are deployed around site are the machine, the hazard, and the team tag, and they give the status and proximity of the device, as well as X and Y location using GPS. And then we also have the ability to monitor the Z coordinate, the Z position as well, using onboard altimeter. We can then plug various accessories into that device through USB or through Bluetooth. So we can either have an external sensor that's standard over USB or Bluetooth, USB-C that is, or we can even make a custom USB accessory if there's something specific that we want to sense. Or you could have an external control, or you could connect it to a smartphone to send data over throughout the site using our private local area network. We also have a device called Plinks Lite, which is a device that can connect standard I/O sensors or condition monitoring, or even provide access control if you want to away from the main site office. And all of those functions all the data from those are collected by the Plinks hub, which is the device pictured there. That's the thing that creates the local network, and it also enables local site management. So when a worker turns up in the morning, they receive their device, they either key in their unique number, or we link that to a biometric scanner, which enables them access and issues them with the device. They're then returned in the evening, or vice versa if it's an evening shift, and for charging. It's important to say that we don't actually hold user information at this point. We're linking IDs of devices to IDs of people, and it's up to the client if they want to keep any personal information about the worker. And then all of that data is then replicated into the cloud and to our databases, and we can use our web application to have live or historical view, and also to have an event log, so you can go back in time and see when incidents have happened. And then the raw data is accessible via API, and that's bidirectional. So it could be that we're pumping out technical data about what's happened on site, or it could be that we're ingesting personal information from a client, and that makes the experience a lot easier because they can see actually who it is rather than just an ID. So right now we're focused on the actual physical deployment of the technology, so the hardware and the software solutions that enable data to be captured. So like our core pillars, if you like, are location and proximity and connectivity. And where we're heading is being able to do something with that raw vast amount of data. So really to build intelligence around that. So that's ingesting technical data, risk data, and personal data, and then creating this connection so that we can make it useful for everyone. Doing through that, we've been looking at using the SafetiBase schema as a way of exporting data. So far to date, we've been able to get data out of our platform and into SafetiBase, and we really see this as a bi-directional link. So you could either take information from the real world and plug it into SafetiBase, or vice versa. You can identify hazard in the design stage, as we mentioned earlier, and then that can be brought in to make recommendations for how a hazard tag or a geofence type zone is set up. So yeah, we really see it as a bi-directional method, and I think we're open to seeing how this data can be used more broadly to improve health and safety through hazard zoning and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's everything from me. Any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly or in the Q&A after.
That was awesome, Tommy. Really impressive stuff. I have a question straight off the bat. What's the commercial model behind it? Are people literally buying? Are you selling hardware, or is it kind of hardware as a service type thing? Is it sold as a bundle? How does it work commercially for people?
So yeah, we sell them. So they're kits of parts, because it can be quite complex as to what your site requirements are. So it's kit of parts. So it is primarily a hardware sell. However, we want to collaborate to get the data out there, and part of this 3D repo conversation is how we can utilize it and how everyone can benefit from it. But there is also the part of the intelligence application. There is various features built into that which are chargeable, but it's completely optional. You can use it just as a hazard proximity detection solution, completely on its own with no connection to the internet, or you can connect it to the internet and we can add different features dependent on use case.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so we're on to the Q&A section now. So guys, please do get your questions in. I've got quite a few for Bogdan, but yeah, more questions for Zane and Karim would be great. So keep them coming in. The Q&A panel's just off to the right hand side, I think, when you're looking at it. So Bogdan, the first thing that people have been asking a lot about is where the data goes afterwards, which I kind of get. So I'm going to try and summarize this from a number of questions that we've had. But 3D Repo, as we demonstrate, it kind of seems a bit like an endpoint. So people create the risks, add the treatments, it's in 3D Repo, which is great, but obviously people have contractual requirements to deliver this in different ways, whether that be an Excel spreadsheet or derived within the BIM model directly as an RVT or an IFC file. How can we support those workflows?
Yeah, good question. The good thing is, since 3D Repo is a cloud-based application, you also have APIs for it. What that means is not only you can export those actual safety-based reports in, let's say, PDF file format. Good thing is every risk has a hyperlink, so you can send them directly the risk information instead of a massive report. But you can also, using APIs, link alternative tools. You can bring the data into Excel, you can bring the data into Power BI or Tableau and build your own custom dashboards and information. And there have been some examples where people were using things like even Dynamo plugins, where they automatically query the information in the cloud and then auto-populate risk information pins on their 3D model in Revit. What that does is then automatically publishes to their drawing sheets. So they automated that and essentially identified risks in 3D remotely and then publish 150 drawings with the risk pins there. So the guys going on site, they are aware of their conditions.
Yeah, and just the sales guy coming out in me now will tell you that stuff like that is available to download from the 3D Repo website in the download section. So if
Correct,
you want to
yes.
look at the Dynamo script or any of the integration stuff, please go along there and have a look. All right, Bogdan, let's give you another one. Yeah, so it's stuff about integration, which I think you've covered there. There's an open API. You can add stuff to it. Is there a way to view the issues within 3D Repo in more of a not in the viewer, I guess is what they're asking?
Yeah, it is possible. We also have issues in risks board, which is similar to Trello board. What's really nice is that people can access that board using web browsers on PC or even iPad. So what guys can do, they can go out, take pictures on iPad on site, and then once they get internet access, they can log risks there as well. So you can upload images, do additional markup on top. So for anyone who is perhaps wanting to do a much better risk management than using Excel spreadsheets, but don't necessarily have 3D model, you can do that using SafetiBase and 3D Repo still. You have a nice interactive dashboard everyone gets access to, and you can curate your treatment suggestions, which then makes it easier for obviously your treatment mitigation suggestions.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, Zane, bit of a tough one for you. Have projects that use SafetiBase seen better performance on site, such as have less people been injured?
So one of the things that we're looking, well, I'll answer the question. We're at the stage now where we've basically been able to collate the risks. So we've started with, actually no, let me start again, sorry. Part of what we've developed to date has come to the point where it's testable on projects very recently. So we're currently in the stage of trialing this on projects. Of course, there's also the element of when you take it onto site, how can you document those risks or document the incidents and link them back to the risks themselves, which is one of the next intermediary stages that we're looking at. Once we have that, we can start tying them together and then see if there is actually value in what we're doing on those sites with regards to how those risks are managed. So at the moment, we're in the preliminary stages of trying to collate and standardize all those risks, which is the first stage we have to take. I kind of think that we need to learn to walk before we can run. So I'm hoping that we do get to that stage relatively soon. But at this moment in time, we're in the first few phases of rolling this out. And of course, as more people use this, we can get to that next stage much quicker. So really, I'd push the question back onto the individual and one, thank them for it, but two, say, please sign up to using SafetiBase and help us get there quicker.
Yeah. So another one, Zane, I might need your help with this a little bit, maybe from more of the SafetiBase and the 3D Repo point of view, but how does SafetiBase apply to smaller projects which may not have as mature BIM models? From a how we've implemented 3D Repo in SafetiBase point of view, you could use it without even having a model, right? So you could use the Kanban board area, the issues and risks board, without ever having a model, and just collate it and use it like a really powerful online collaborative Excel spreadsheet almost without the viewer. I think if it's a less mature BIM model, I think even so, you're still doing this process in an Excel spreadsheet. So applying those risks to even a very low level of detail BIM model is still a better process than having it in an Excel spreadsheet that no one can see. In my opinion, I don't know, Zane, do you have anything to elaborate on that one with? Because I know it's one of our key areas was to make sure that SafetiBase it's not something that's just for the HS2s and Tideways of this world, right? Yeah. It is for all projects.
Yeah, as Andrew, as you said, it's an industry initiative for everyone, which is why we've tried to move. So initially we'd looked at or toyed with the idea of putting on SharePoint, but then understanding that smaller companies wouldn't be able to stomach that kind of approach. And so we've moved away from that to working closer with 3D Repo on the base of how we can take this forwards. Now, when it comes to looking at it on a project, the main focus of having those 3D models is not so much that you can detail it down to the bolt. So the level of detail is not really fundamentally the point in which it can become successful. There's, as Andrew, as you mentioned, obviously you can look at it from a Kanban board perspective, or you can link it via APIs into any tool or system that you like. But if you look at it just on the basis of creating a very bare bones basic model, which is maybe even just an architectural model, so it's how you have in the surrounding vicinity to have just big white blocks. You could even use those, and just because of the fact that those risks are now geospatially located, being able to filter against those becomes really important. So let's say person A were to send person B on site. If they were, let's say on a highway scheme, going between, it was a 10-kilometer scheme, and they were only going to be visiting on chainage 200 to 500, you can just show them the risks from 0 to a kilometer and say, just focus on these. You don't need to focus on the next 9 kilometers worth of risks. So you don't need to take the whole sheet with you and worry about all of that. Or you can go on site and use your, you can obviously look at the offline viewer and see everything live whilst you're there. You don't really need to worry about trawling through a lot of information that's in a format that you're perhaps not familiar with. So there are lots of opportunities to make this work for your processes. I think it's quite dynamic in how it can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant. So another question, please clarify what data you're collecting and what library data you're using. So from our perspective, it's maybe not been clear enough, but each individual company that starts using SafetiBase within 3D Repo has their own database, right? That you are putting information in, you're storing it in. At the moment, we are not sharing that between companies. So you will open up SafetiBase, you can download that template at the beginning, and you can enter in your treatment suggestion information that you use internally, standard treatments that you would use for standard situations. You can also download from HSE, or you will be able to download from HSE a set of stuff that's been curated by them. And we're currently working on a method for people to add suggestions to that curated database of information from HSE, but they are separate at the moment. On top of that, we are looking at options for setting up a data trust. I don't know, Zane, do you want to talk around that a bit more? And go outside of 3D Repo bit?
Yeah, so obviously, as mentioned before, SafetiBase is really something that started up for the whole industry. The premise is not to mount it on 3D Repo and keep it there for its entire lifetime. So currently it does sit within the 3D Repo service because 3D Repo have supported SafetiBase in this endeavor. But as we move forward, we're looking to separate SafetiBase into a form of trust, obviously as a charity. And the plan is to have industry representation from both private groups and public groups who will be able to sit on a board that would be able to govern how this data is managed for the industry, anonymizing the information so public groups can benefit as well as private groups can benefit. And by doing so, that would allow any software vendor, regardless of what their position is and how they want to what their commercial strategies are, they'd all be able to access that data, obviously within the governance, and make sure that we can get a little bit more information out of our processes. This is also additionally true for small vendors or small to medium enterprises and smaller consultancies as well, in being able to leverage this data however they see fit. So again, it's going to be a premise which is basically for anyone to use in any way they wish.
Yeah, brilliant. Karim, do you have anything to add in there about the data that's collected and how it can be collected?
Yes, so we found that there is tacit and explicit information or knowledge in the data related to health and safety, and it's difficult to get it only from documents. You need expertise, you need different projects, and that's our idea when we started to look at this. And so, for example, when we looked at the 196 readers and press release, we identified that 90% of them are related to 9 different scenarios related for falling from open edges. And based on this, we went to the industry, especially designers and planners, and asked them, how would we deal with this, instead of just looking at standards and guidelines, which is in a very high level. So I believe both of them, in an open data or data trust, as Zane was talking about, would be very important to move on in the industry in this area about health and safety.
Okay, brilliant. Zane, sorry, I'm coming back to you again for this one. And Karim, feel free to, or anyone, feel free to jump in on them, but it feels like something that is right up Zane's street. Can you explain how post-construction residual risk can be communicated to the asset user, including risks affecting maintenance, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So so Bogdan touched on this in his demonstration, where he mentioned and showed that when you edit risks, so when you add a risk, it will show it with, so naturally with any database, whenever you set up a risk, it will give you a timestamp as to when that has been entered into the system. But what you can see within the 3D repo viewer, as well as information that you can pull via the APIs, is to know when that risk was created and what was changed, or what treatment was created as part of that risk and what was changed. So anytime you make an adjustment to the risk in any way, shape or form, whether it's by mitigating it, eliminating it, reducing it, whatever it may be, it will show within an immutable audit trail. And so what that actually does is previously we may, I mean, in bad practice, there'll be instances where people may remove risks and say that's an eliminated risks. Some people may keep it on the spreadsheet, but then it doesn't necessarily become relevant as to what it is and the consistency in the process as well. Again, going back to that point of that consistent process, this will mean that when you start looking at it, so a designer's prepared all the risks and sent it over to the contractor, they will see everything that is still a residual risk, but they will still be able to then go through and basically uncheck the risks that are quote unquote closed out and determine why those are closed out, what was the rationale as to why that was done, and be able to see across the lifetime of the design at what date, at what time, and who decided that that risk had been mitigated or eliminated. Therefore, it provides far more clarity into the meaning behind a risk, and it's not a case of guessing or thinking that they know exactly what the premise was. So with that then, design information and parts of construction information, even when going to the operator, are not lost. That whole chain is kept from start to finish. So thank you for that question. That's it's quite an important one to take note of.
Can I add something? When we were identifying the treatment prompts, we had a concept called construction scope. So in this, there is operation and maintenance also. So sometimes we provide a treatment prompt based on the construction or the scope of the work, even if it's operation and maintenance. So sometimes you will find treatments related to in-use, not only related to construction stage.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so another question here. How easy is it to configure safety rules for risks, and how often do these need to be updated? Can these be automatically identified within the 3D environment? So at the moment, remember what we're setting up here is rules, I guess, for treatments, saying that if a risk has these characteristics to it, this is some of the options of the treatments that you could apply to it. We're not yet looking at a model and saying, show me where all the risks are automatically. I say yet, it is something that we're discussing and is on the horizon. To anyone out there, what it requires is better structured data and cleaner BIM models. So when you give us them, it will be more of a more realistic to look at that, is what I would say. If anyone has anything to add to that, Bogdan, Zane, anyone?
Yeah, you're quite right. Yes, I think it's about structuring your data first, making sure that everything is following rules, because quite frequently people want to automate things and perform some sort of machine learning and things like that. And, you know, like I said, instead of wasting time trying to read poor data, if you get the data right, then it's easier to deploy anything that is going to benefit that on top of it. So
Yeah.
At the moment, we can obviously set up rules within the 3D repo and link it to SafetiBase around the data behind the model. So saying fire safety plans, show me where something doesn't have a fire rating applied to it, or the fire rating is less than a certain amount. And we can set those rules up, and that can be automatically checked every time a new version of the model is uploaded. But in terms of knowing that something is an edge and someone could fall off it and that type of health and safety risk, I think there's less we can do at the moment. So,
I think it's also worth mentioning with regards to that question that it goes back to the previous question on how we can actually link things up to site-based risks. So, or not site-based risks, sorry, site incidents. So, of course, if you just highlight a risk, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has happened or the frequency at which it happens. But when you've tied that together and you've got the life cycle of the risk, so to understand the risk, linking it to an incident, which we hope we never have, but unfortunately we do, depending on the fatality of that risk, you can almost then, once you've got all that data, so again, as Bogdan and Andrew, you both said with regards to the structured data, you need that, but once you've got that and you've driven all that information into the system, you can then start looking at providing an approach to saying, well, the possibility of this risk occurring across this type of site or with these type of components together increases by 80% if you place this third component as part of it, or it increases by X amount more. And so fundamentally what you'll do is you'll then have a likelihood on a risk occurring. But of course, if you only have limited amounts of data or poorly structured data, it's next to impossible to do, and it's just a pointless guess exercise. So it's an amalgamation of, one, a good structure in the data, but two, it also has to be one where there's copious amounts of data to be able to train off and understand where those frequencies lie within the data sets. And that's where the whole premise of SafetiBase lies, in being an industry initiative, because we can only be successful in this, we all work together. Without it and just doing it on a company by company basis, you'll never have enough data for it to be meaningful.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think we're going to go for one last question, because I realise we're well over time and people are dwindling away in terms of attendees, which I don't blame them because we are over. But the conversation has been good. So last one, regarding documenting and communicating risk, is there an opportunity to demonstrate CDM compliance through 3D Repo and or SafetiBase? Anyone for that one?
I could dive in again, but
go on, Zane.
People might get sick of my voice. So with regards to demonstrating CDM compliance, it's the equivalent of, it's no different to how we currently do it on the basis of risk registers. So just by showing a risk register does not necessarily mean you're a competent designer or you fulfilled your principal contractor or principal designer roles. What it will do is it will make the task easier to undertake, but it is by no means in the same capacity as a risk register, something that you put in front of someone and say, this is me demonstrating my duties as a principal contractor or principal designer. I'd recommend that obviously read up on CDM 2015. I won't start going verbatim on what the rules are for the 7 different categories for that, but SafetiBase does make it easier to fulfill your duties in that manner. And there are far more opportunities by using it. So I think it will be useful in that regard.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tommy, I'm just going to ask you one question because it's just come in, and I realise we've kind of left you out a bit. In terms of, I'll go for the same question that we got for SafetiBase earlier. In terms of effect on your projects, have you got any stats around the effect that it's had on your existing projects and people who've used the system?
I think it's similar answer really, is that it's more about, at the moment, it's about adoption, driving adoption to capture that data. And I think, you know, over time we'll be in a better position to be able to say exactly the effect.
Yeah.
But we're capturing more data than you would without the devices. So we're positive that it'll have that positive impact. Yeah.
I think some of this as well, it's hard because people always say to us with even the move to BIM or 3D or anything, well, it's proved to me this is better than it was before. Well, give me your measurements of how it was before.
Yeah.
But then you're even not comparing apples with apples, right? Because no project's the same. It's like you'd have to build that project twice. And in your case, with that same group of people on site all the time, to have a real effective measure of how much effect it had.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing you could say is that if you had a really long project, you could say over time, once you implemented your system, it got better, but then you could be in a different stage of construction or anything that could affect that, right?
Yeah, and I think capturing near misses as a measure is a good starting point, and then we can, or at least near misses or interactions, should I say, that could be a positive impact. And then, like you say, there's not going to be an absolute answer, but we can have a good guess at the impact of the product.
Yeah, and are you seeing a lot of interest from this kind of 2 meter rule infringement type stuff? Is that something that's driving things at the moment, do you feel?
Yeah, I think that's going to drive adoption of digital technologies such as, you know, wearables and people and plant interfaces, just because it will normalize the ability to be able to tag objects. So it is an opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely there is a big industry push to have some social distancing some methods of managing social distancing in place, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thanks very much, guys. There is one more question here which leads me on to a point I'm not going to answer now, but it says please expand on your thoughts about automatic rule checking, which leads me on to explain that this is a series of webinars. There will be a few more coming out. After this, you will get an invite to the next one, which I believe is 3D Repo for change management, but one in the next few weeks will be around rule checking and data validation, where we will talk about what we do now and we will expand on the future of where we see that going. But for now, yeah, thanks very much, everyone. I believe attendees will be receiving some sort of survey at the end of this by email. So please do fill that out. Your feedback's really appreciated. But for now, thanks very much to our guests, Tommy, Zane and Karim, and for Bogdan for joining us. Yeah, hope to see you on the next event. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks all. Bye.